My name is Garrett Schmidt, and I am the CEO and managing editor for VBC Exhibit Hall. And I'd like to welcome you all to today's live webinar hosted by TCARE. And this one is called Practical Person-Centered Skills for Case Managers. And I know a lot of you on the line today are in case or care manager positions, and so going to have a lot of great information to share. So I hope you are able to stick around to the end with us. A few items of note as we get started. This is a traditional webinar format, so you don't need to worry about turning off your microphone or your camera. That's been done for you. But we do want to hear from you. And we're going to have a time for some Q&A towards the end of the presentation. So if you have a question at all for any of our speakers, which we'll introduce in a moment here, please at any time drop that question into your module. There's a place specifically for questions, and we're going to get to as many as we can. We have a lot of material to cover today. We have a big audience. So if we don't get to yours for some reason, don't worry. Someone will make sure to reach out via email and make sure your question gets answered afterwards. And then finally, the session today is being recorded. So what's going to happen is when we conclude, maybe about an hour or so after we're done, you will receive an email. And in that email will be a link to today's recording as well as to the slides. And you're going to want to download these slides because there's a lot of great information here that you can review and share with colleagues and friends, and we hope that you do. So without further ado, I am going to now turn it over to Jodi Fenner, and she's the VP of Execution and Growth with TCARE, and she is going to introduce our speakers today. So welcome, Jodi.
Thank you, Garrett. First, I want to thank all of the attendees who have participated. This is the third in our series with IntellectAbility on intellectual and developmental disability topics, and really appreciate the work that you are doing in your home and communities, supporting people with specialized healthcare needs, but in a way that is, I want to say person-centered, since that's what we're talking about today, but really what you do really helps people live independently in their communities and have meaningful lives. So for the attendees, thank you for everything that you do. And want to do just a brief introduction to Dr. Escudé. He is actually going to introduce himself here in a little bit because his immense background is quite frankly beyond me. I met Craig almost 15 years ago when I was a developmental disabilities director, and he was one of the most highly recognized faces in the field at that time, and that has just grown today. And I feel blessed to have stayed in touch and have really enjoyed watching IntellectAbility and how the organization has grown and the immense resources and expertise that they bring to the people that they work with, from their state customers to provider organizations and other stakeholders. So again, I'll pass that to Craig in just a minute. New with us today is David Toback. And David has about 17 years of experience working in the field of IDD. He's worked both at the provider level and at the state level as a training and project manager for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. He has experience in transition initiatives for those moving from institutional to community settings, and he's also worked as a CIS interviewer for many years. Today, we're capitalizing on his person-centered practices mentor and person-centered thinking trainer experience, where he's credentialed by the Learning Community for Person-Centered Practices. Again, I want to thank both you, David and Craig, for being here with us today and sharing on this important topic. And I'm going to pass it to you, Dr. Escudé.
Thank you so much, Jodi. Those are very kind words, and you made me blush. But thank you very much, and the pleasure is all mine. And I'm very glad we've been able to remain connected all of this time. So if we'll go to the next slide, just the highlights here. I'm a family physician by training. I spent the majority of my clinical career providing healthcare for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and now have the wonderful pleasure of working with IntellectAbility and great people such as David, where we develop tools and training for supporters of people with IDD to help identify health risks that are often missed and to help support staff to know how to act to improve health outcomes. The only thing I'll touch on here is I would invite you to join us on the IDD Health Matters podcast. It's a podcast where we interview leaders and state directors and developmental agency providers and case managers and clinicians and supporters and people with IDD and self-advocates about health and wellness for people with IDD. So I'd love for you to join that, join us there, and you can find that on any podcast platform. David, if you go to the next slide, I'll just talk just a minute about IntellectAbility. Again, we're a company built on a mission of helping supporters identify health risks and addressing health risks to improve overall health outcomes. We do this through our 3 sub-brands. The HRST is the health risk screening tool. It's a web-based tool that's used in about 26 states and over 130,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are screened using this tool. And the tool identifies specific health risks for that person, and then it provides supporters with actionable steps that they can take to mitigate those health risks and improve overall health outcomes. Our Academy sub-brand is filled with e-learning courses on various topics, including things like the Fatal 5, which are the top preventable causes of illness and death, understanding behaviors as signs of underlying medical conditions, and many others, including courses on person-centered thinking training, and person-centered services, which leads us to our 3rd sub-brand, which is all about person-centered thinking training, person-centered credentialing and mentoring. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to a guy who knows much more about that than I do, David Toback. So David, the show's yours.
Thank you very much, Craig. And now it's my turn to blush. So in any case, everyone, good morning or good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. Happy Friday and welcome. Thank you very much. I want to echo Jodi's expression of appreciation. The gift of your time is deeply appreciated. My name is David Toback. I've been with IntellectAbility for almost now a decade, and I have been a mentor of person-centered thinking training for the last 4, and going back to becoming a trainer about 6 years ago. So I have a lot of experience in the practice of person-centered thinking. It is a practice as well as a mindset, something I'll be covering today for you all as case managers, and what does it mean to apply these things. In addition, I'm also a Charting a Life course ambassador, so I also know a bit about that world as well in terms of how that exploration of people's lives can only expand our ability to offer those experiences that lead to meaningful lives lived. So with all of that said, let's get into our topic for today, which is what it means to discover. And really our outline is going to be our guide in terms of focusing first on what it means to listen up with the people that we serve, because when we enhance our ability to listen, we enhance our ability to be of service, whether that is through the documentation that represents what we heard and how that documentation supports those we serve. We are also going to talk a little bit about how to use a variety of discovery approaches, whether it's the way we listen, the way we respond, or using, in this case, some person-centered thinking skills to amplify how we listen with our ears and eyes, thus leading to enhanced abilities to be of service and respond to those needs, again, creating the lives for those we serve in a more meaningful way. So let's start with listening. A lot of us probably have many plates spinning in the air, connected with the jobs that you do, the demands on your time, expectations related to documentation, and on it goes. Now, all of these things are critical and important. I don't want to diminish them. What I do want to do first for our time together this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where you are, is to remind us all that it really does begin with listening. Really listening to those that we support in terms of what they are sharing with us through their words, through their actions, and through their responses in where they are at. To give you an example, years ago, as I did my work in Georgia, we were supporting a young lady named Emily who really went often to her local aquatic center and bowling alley. But there was something happening at these 2 places that she visited. And this is where listening and paying attention plays a role. Rather than swimming at the aquatic center or bowling at the bowling alley, she was spending a majority of her time at the snack bar where people her age were hanging out and spending time. And it was when that observation was brought back that we were able to adjust how to support Emily. Turns out, it wasn't so much about going to the aquatic center or going bowling. It was more about wanting to make and keep friends. And that changed the trajectory of her support. If we had just stuck with the same old routine or established supports that we thought were working, then maybe the opportunity for Emily to make and keep friends might not have stepped forward. So being able to notice when words and actions are out of sync, or when we notice what someone does when we go somewhere, is a big part of what leads to meaningful support opportunities for those we serve. And we want to get clarification because when someone shares something with us, we are going to make a guess about what it means. And that's a very natural thing to do. All of us do this. What we want to do also is confirm what we heard to make sure that our interpretation does not run away from the person that we're there to serve and work with. Because sometimes that can happen. We hear something once and it's like, oh, this is what it must mean. But not necessarily always so. We want to infuse in our ability to listen and respond a good sense of curiosity. To enhance that idea, I offer the quote from Walt Whitman, who said, "Be curious, not judgmental." Thank you, Walt Whitman. Thank you, Ted Lasso. If you know, you know. Barbecue sauce. The idea here is that we want to make sure that we're looking beyond the surface and ensuring that the knowledge the person has is what we gain that ultimately leads to support. In all person-centered thinking, in all of its practices, we want to make sure that when we are providing support, we are listening and thinking first, and that listening and thinking leads to the action of support ultimately. Now, to add a little bit of gravity to what I'm suggesting here, words and actions are both forms of communication. In fact, some numbers to support my ideas are here for you, but I think our own experience backs this up. Over half of what we communicate on the daily is done without ever speaking a word. So a little bit of a soapbox moment, if you'll indulge me. For those listening or viewing me online or watching this recording later, a question. How many of you have heard or used the term nonverbal in the past? Yes? Yes. Well, I'm here to share with you, and I'm going to take a risk because I'm that kind of guy. If I'm going to be wrong, I'm not going to be unsure. You, me, all of us are nonverbal. Oh my goodness, what just happened? Yes, I'll prove it. My beautiful partner in life, Jackie, is a gold medal Olympian in the event I call the look. True story. See, you're laughing already. And if you're laughing, you're learning. There's a granule of truth in this self-depreciating humor. Let me get to it. Jackie can very effectively and often communicate information with me, with the family, without speaking a word. Would anybody accuse Jackie of being nonverbal? I doubt it. So I believe my point here is clear, that not just by the numbers, but by our own experience, information about preferences, hoped for outcomes, ways to support are arriving to us both with words and without. And it is so very critical to pay attention when we're in those exchanges, even maybe if we are not necessarily the person who gathers that information or learns it directly from the person. We can encourage those that we connect with and need information from to practice active listening and paying attention to those details that may lead to moments of support that the person desperately wants as part of their experience. Because without their input, without the wisdom they share with us, our jobs won't be as effective as they could be. So how might people communicate with us not using words. There are many things we can pay attention to. We can be observing people's facial expressions, or the way they move their body, or the way they vocalize, or the way they present themselves. If they're avoiding eye contact, making eye contact, what they seek to touch or experience physically. All of these are clues towards that which is important to the person, and how we can take that knowledge of what is gaining their attention, what might be something they don't want that is equally valuable, and build support around that knowledge rather than our own guesswork. In fact, if I may be so bold, the people we work for know more and experience more than perhaps we sometimes give them credit for. And so we would be well served to be good stewards of listening up, because it leads to responding up. Now, how do we enhance our ability to listen? Well, I mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to get clarity around what people would like and do not like, or want and do not want. Because sometimes when we make a guess about what we think the information means, our guess may not be in alignment with the person's intention. I'll give you an example of such a learning moment for me. Years ago, there was somebody I supported, Elliot, we'll call him, and Elliot really wanted a driver's license. For context, this story took place in the Atlanta metro area, where I happen to live. And so, as a team, we gathered and thought, how might we be able to provide Elliot the opportunity to access the community where he lives? Another piece of information for you in this story. It would have been unsafe to put Elliot behind the wheel because of how he could see. So we thought about the options and came up with several. Uber, Lyft. In Atlanta, we do have a metropolitan transit system, buses, light rail, all the things. So we put into action these supports for Elliot. And sometime later, some months later, we checked in with Elliot to see how these supports were working for him. Now, when we asked Elliot the question, the way he answered was telling. We asked Elliot, how are you? How do you like these supports? Are they working for you? I understand you went to go see movies with some friends. How are things going? And Elliot answered like so. I'm fine. Was Elliot fine? I hope you said no. Because the way he answered was out of alignment with the words. He said he was fine, but he was looking down. He sounded sad. So we paid attention to that. And somebody asked a question that changed everything. Somebody asked Elliot, what would you like from the driver's license? Immediately, his body language changed. He perked up, smile on his face. He said, when people go to the grocery store to buy wine or beer, they flash a card. I want that card. And all of us had the same collective, oh my goodness, this was never about driving moment. Now, this story is true, and it's important. Because for us as a team, nobody was a villain here. No one was trying to make Elliot's life worse on purpose. The other thing is that making the connection between wanting a driver's license and wanting to drive a car is a common connection, something our minds would go to first. Everyone listening, I want to give you something that'll help you dig it a little deeper in a very effective way. Here it comes. Ask about the ask. May I say that again? Ask about the ask. How many times has it happened for you or others you work with that people supported ask for things, and in the moment that the ask is shared, you think to yourself, how is this going to happen? In the immediate moment, my recommendation is this. Figure out where that ask came from. And from there, how might we start building support towards that ultimate goal? Small wins are wins. And using Ask About the Ask will help you accumulate some. So I hope that that will be of service to you. Other times, we need to get out of our own way. What do I mean by this? Well, let me put it on you. How many of you have experienced being offered help when you didn't want it? Anybody ever been there? It's like, slow your roll. I don't need you to do anything right now. I just want you to listen. Relatable? I hope so. Because it's a human experience. And person-centered practices, while it did have its beginnings in allied health and how it can assist people receiving supports, person-centered practice is not just about human services. It's human stuff. So another offer related to when we gain information about people and how we're going to start building supports with them, another idea. It's really a question. Do you need me to help, or do you need me to listen? May I say that again? Do you need me to help, or do you need me to listen? It's a very worthwhile strategy that, again, offers anyone providing support or wishing to learn with people that you're providing supports to a more meaningful piece of information that leads to more meaningful support. In fact, I know the truth of how valuable that one question is by this. You'll see that wedding band on my hand. My beloved partner Jackie and I were about to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary, and I believe that the reason this wedding band remains on my hand is because I asked the Queen that question many times each day. True story. And the reason I do so is because it helps me to know how I can be helpful. Wanting to be helpful is a noble ambition. It's a wonderful thing. Undisciplined and unguided helpfulness can lead to chaos and hurt feelings, perhaps both. So do you need me to help, or do you need me to listen? Perhaps that's something we can add to the mixture of what it means to listen up and respond up. So in terms of using these, what the learning community has called, and other disciplines as well, reflecting skills, acknowledging people's statements and what they're saying in terms of what it means to them and how it means to them. We also want to summarize what people say. So you're telling me that you like to do this, then that. And again, be open to sharing gratitude. It's always a good move to say, thank you for sharing that with me. I very much appreciate that. In person-centered practice, reflecting skills ultimately help us to gain a better understanding of why people mentioned what they mentioned. Pro tip, when anyone you're interacting with mentions something that's of interest to them, there's a reason behind that. There's a value behind that. And in helping professions, particularly allied health and IDD and mental health or whatever discipline, it's a good idea for us to figure out where is that stuff coming from. Going back to Ask About the Ask, if you will. Very practical way to maybe pull back the curtain a little bit and have a deeper learning experience that leads to more meaningful support with the person. Because how many people do we serve have supports that are delivered at them many times a day, and as a result, feel unseen, maybe lonely, isolated, in plain sight. And no one need live that way. Having a disability does not disqualify anyone from having a full lived experience. So other things that we want to raise awareness around in terms of how we use language, how we interact in moments of learning and listening, is it is a good idea to avoid talking down to a person. We want to try to avoid those phrases that would make someone feel belittled or spoken down to. We also want to say words and share words that people can understand. And there's going to be variety in the way people are able to understand what is shared with them or the response that you're seeking to gain from them. So it is a little bit of a volley when you're having these sort of conversations. And it is always a great first sign of respect to refer to the person that you're interacting with by the name they would like to go by. No one simply wants to be referred to by their diagnosis qualifications or by their latest behavioral event or some unendearing term that we would never accept for ourselves, our friends, or family. So it is a great way to invite somebody into the conversation by referring to them by the name or the name that they go by. It also may be necessary for us to give time and space for people to give a response. It may take a little bit longer for somebody that we provide supports with to first think about the question, second, what response they want to give, and third, providing that response. So again, that opportunity to observe is going to be critical in terms of where somebody might be along that process for themselves, and being patient and looking for those behavioral cues and offering encouragement along the way. Because again, words and physical body language both communicate valuable information that are worth us paying attention to and getting curious about and ultimately responding to. So in terms of active listening, there are several here for your consideration, but there's one I'd like to focus on for the moment in that lower right corner where it says use of open body language. Again, body language communicates much, and something I'd like to add to our learning today is that body language may have a cultural interpretation connected to it. To give you an example from my own life, before I started working in allied health and mental health, right out of college, my first job was working with a Japanese trading company. And I learned from my Japanese colleagues that direct eye contact for them was not a sign of respect, but a sign of aggression. And that surprised me because I had been taught, I had been raised in a culture that values eye contact as a sign of respect. So there may be times in our future, and I can't predict what you may experience exactly, but just to raise your awareness that body language and its interpretation may have a cultural bend or lens to it. I'll give you another example. This might mean I'm annoyed or angry, but it also might mean I'm trying to keep warm. So again, body language and paying attention to these things and how we learn from them will be part of the process that provides information that leads to support moments. I am a big fan of Dr. Wayne Dyer. He did a lot of work public speaking on PBS years ago and has many books out there. Highly recommend. One of his quotes is one of my favorites. Here, I share it with you. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. There might be times when we go into these moments of learning or creating supports with people where we might have ideas already in the back of our mind about how something might look or take shape. And in the work that we do, it isn't a reliable way of approaching this sort of person-centered approach to support building and learning. What we want to be open to is the information that comes to us and how does that help the next step take shape, which is why I like this quote. Because when we change our perspective based off of what's shared with us, based off of how people provide to us who they are, because ultimately learning who someone is leads to how do we support. If I may say that again, learning more meaningfully about who someone is will always lead to more meaningful how do we support moments. Thus the quote here. So when might we actually use discovery, put it to work, and engage with this? There are many opportunities. In fact, maybe you've experienced this yourself, in your role, perhaps as a case manager or service coordinator or someone who is the guardian of important documents and planning processes that end up following the person who's receiving supports. Discovery couldn't be more critical in any of these things. In fact, maybe some of you have read or interacted with an annual planning document that looked and felt cookie cutter. Has anybody experienced this document or 5 in your past? Probably. When the documents that follow the person look and feel cookie cutter, I am willing to put money down on the statement I'm about to say. A cookie cutter document means there was no discovery. When we are intentional about engaging with discovery moments that lead to support moments, it will by default change the documentation in a person-centered way, which, by the way, is in alignment with the HCBS settings rule expectations and CMS final rule, and on it goes. When I have the privilege, such as today, to share what person-centered practices can do, that's really one of the big benefits, is that when we practice these things and use what person-centeredness teaches us, we're in compliance at a federal level by default. And most of us, in one way or another, are probably asked through our review processes or policies to show evidence of person-centered thinking and planning. Well, this is a very practical way to do this. Use discovery before you plan. Think and learn about who a person is before you plan, and then bring that discovery information to table and see what it does to the planning process. There is one such practical way that we can bring discovery into the planning process itself. I suggested first, discover about the person, bring that information, see how that leads to the construction of goals and objectives with the person. That's one option. But let's say you're in the meeting itself and no one is saying anything. First of all, that's got to be frustrating, because having organized these meetings in the past myself, I know the effort it takes to schedule, to coordinate, to bring everybody together. And now, no one's saying anything? There is a person-centered skill that you can use to jumpstart such a silence. In the world of person-centeredness, we call it the 2-minute drill. And briefly, what the 2-minute drill does is it brings important information to the top, connected with a specific topic or situation that you're looking at. So let's take the annual planning meeting situation where no one is saying much. You can jumpstart that conversation using the 2-minute drill in this way. Ask everyone at the table to share in 2 minutes what they hope the next year will look like with the person you're there to meet with. So, hypothetical. Greetings, everybody. We are here to meet with Monique and discuss her annual plan this year. And I think it might be neat if we just took a little bit of time for each of us to share what we hope we get to experience with Monique in the year to come. For the purposes of time, I want to give everybody 2 minutes to share what they think about or would like to see. Let's start with, and now everybody gets a turn. The resulting conversation will be way different than the silence that preceded it. The 2-minute drill will bring forward ideas, considerations, adventures, opportunities that would not have otherwise been shared. And now we're rolling. Also, a little bit of a soapbox moment number 2, if you're tracking at home. I've always been curious, skeptical even, of the phrase "no changes in the past year." Really? There's a story there. And I'd love to hear how you went around the sun one time and nothing happened to you. By the way, I've heard of unicorns too, but I've never met one of them neither. Here's the thing, not trying to be mean or cantankerous, but I am trying to be real. There's got to be something that we can discuss. People change. Small changes matter, big changes matter, and in between. So how we pay attention, how we discover, is going to directly influence how we effectively support. So how might we amplify discovery? I mentioned the 2-minute drill on the previous slide in terms of how it might be used to bring important information to the top connected with a specific situation or setting. The 2-minute drill in the example I gave, of course, applied to an annual planning meeting, but the 2-minute drill isn't limited to that. You could, for example, ask somebody in 2 minutes to share what their ideal vacation would look like. And when they share, they're going to share things that catch their attention, that grab their interest, and are clues to things that they value that can lead to, all right, we got some ideas here. Maybe we can start building some supports in that general direction, or take these ideas to inform supports in some way. In a similar way, rituals and routines. This is a really neat skill. Rituals and routines, for context, are those things that we do every day that help our time feel like our own. So, for example, maybe some of us need a cup of coffee in the morning before you're spoken with, because if it's before the cup of coffee, it's probably not going to be as pleasant a conversation as it could be. I'm not speaking about me. No, not at all. Rituals and routines can also include the things that we do to get the day started. Maybe when you initially start your workday, you check email before Slack or Teams or some such. Maybe you have a ritual and routine around getting ready for a vacation or just being out of work mode for a time. And then you have a ritual and routine when you return to work. Maybe you have a ritual and routine as it relates to making a transition from home life to work life and back. Maybe when you get home, you don't immediately want to be asked questions. You would like 10 minutes to sit in the quiet before you get back into kind of what maybe home life asks of you. It could be anything. But my point is, when we explore rituals and routines with people, we again gain clues about what people value and how can we support them. Because ultimately, that's really kind of the name of the game in terms of what we do. We want to provide support. We want to help people live their lives as they see it. Well, how can we do any of that unless we are practical in the way we learn about the picture the person has in their mind connected with what they would like to see happen? So rituals and routines are a wonderful way to bring that learning forward. Equally valuable, good day, bad day. Now, this takes a different perspective on what it means to discover with people about what they would like their experience to be, how they would like to be treated or seen and interacted with in different environments. To give context to the skill, as the parent of 2 school-age kids, my son is 13, my daughter is 11, I use the good day, bad day with them on the daily, because when I pick them up from school and I ask, Jonathan, Joanna, how was your day? What is their pat answer? Good. It's like, no. That's not going to cut it. I'd like to know what made the day a good one. Did you share a laugh with a friend? What was that about? I'd love to be in on the joke. What did you learn today? What question did you ask today? What made you curious? What made you interested? What made you feel good? Maybe you helped out a friend with something. Maybe you were a good listener with somebody. Maybe you earned a mark on a test or a project that surprised you in a good way. What can we celebrate? For the bad day, what made the day a bad one from your perspective? Maybe you had a disagreement with a friend. You're not sure how to resolve it. Maybe you got caught up cutting up with a buddy and teacher called you out. You got embarrassed. Let's talk about it. Again, all of these little nuanced details about what their interpretation of a good day and a bad day are have helped me and Jackie be present with our kids. It is not limited to that example. I've seen job coaches use the good day, bad day skill to help people find work that they're interested in participating in. Maybe the person has a job that they're not a fan of at the moment, but by doing a good day, bad day exploration of their current job situation, it has helped to inform the next job that they seek out and advise to seek out. That is just one example. So let's look at some other application opportunities for these skills. For rituals and routines, another one that we could ask about and gain insight about what people value, how they want to be seen and interacted with, is how do you want to celebrate your next birthday? I'll give you a brief example related to that very question. One of my former colleagues went through our person-centered thinking training and later shared this story I will now share with you. She had a dialogue with an elderly couple she was friendly with. She had just taken the class, and this elderly couple had an adult son that was receiving supports, and she was curious about how things were going, and she used rituals and routines based on the way we taught it in our class. She asked the mom and dad, "How does your son want to celebrate his next birthday?" And the mom in the couple burst into tears. My colleague was not expecting that response. I don't think any of us would either. The moment was what it needed to be, and once the mom was ready to share again, my colleague asked, "What happened?" That question landed with you deeply. What happened? And she said, "In the 33 years we have been speaking with supporters about our son, no one has asked that question." Blew my mind. Because here's the thing, as far as I know, everybody's got a birthday. And here's the neat thing about it. Not one person is going to celebrate the same way. The way you celebrate, the way you want to be acknowledged, the way you don't want to be acknowledged is a window into that which you value, which is fuel towards how do we support. So again, for good day, bad day, we could use this skill to gain insight similar to what I shared with you earlier about Emily, who went to that aquatic center and the bowling alley, but she wasn't swimming at the aquatic center. She was not bowling at the bowling alley. She was hanging out at the snack bar with her friends and peers. And Good Day, Bad Day offered that insight that led to how the support would shift. And again, the 2-minute drill, just reinforcing what I shared earlier. This particular skill in 2 minutes, you can share on a particular topic, and the share is the next clue into what people value, because when people mention something, they do so for a reason. And so the 2-minute drill, almost dovetailing ask about the ask, brings those details that the person values to the surface. And when we know more about who people are by way of what they value, we're able to more effectively support, which is why discovery is so valuable. So why does listening and discovery even matter? Well, Robert Persky did a study about people receiving supports, particularly in their interactions with law enforcement, and learned that those being interviewed or being asked about a crime or some such that required law intervention would admit to things that they didn't even do, simply because of the interaction they were in with these law enforcement officers or others involved in this sort of work. Now, what's very interesting to me and rather telling and spooky even is that I am willing to put money down for a second time on this idea that there are a lot of people out there that are saying things, sharing information, participating in conversations in ways that are telling us what we want to hear. Has anybody ever experienced that? They're saying yes at the right times, no at the right times, and fulfilling whatever the compliance questions are to a T, but do we really know who they are? I'm willing to bet there's probably more that we don't know about people and what they're sharing than what we do without discovery. When we use discovery, when we show we are listening, when we respond in good faith, we can help people share more, to step forward and be who they are because they trust. And that kind of trust is earned. Also, I believe it is possible that there are many people we work for and support that are probably suffering in silence, and no one need be living that life, especially when there are so many people around them that are trying to offer support, but maybe don't necessarily have an effective start line. So I ask for your consideration as you listen and learn with me, that the application of discovery can address dynamics like this, so that people are not suffering in silence or feel unseen, even though they're surrounded by a team of people that support them. There's an opportunity here to learn more meaningfully that leads to how do we support more meaningfully, which, again, extends into providing that experience with people who receive supports that they wish to have. So in person-centered practice, we talk about something called power over. And in brief, power over means that we are reacting and putting our own interpretation onto what we heard and acting upon that without checking in with the person first. We may be running them over. Think about when I mentioned earlier, have any of you received help when you didn't want it? Like somebody was offering you help, but you didn't want it? That's a power over move. And that's kind of a life thing, just to kind of give it some context. So some of the ways that we can avoid power over is by using discovery. That will avoid power over almost by default. And also, when we learn with people about what they wish to have as part of their lived experience, we take steps towards that. We don't just listen to listen and then move on like we didn't actually hear anything, because that's going to lead people to not trust. Think about it for yourself. If you happen to share something important with someone and they were not respectful of that information, they shared it openly when you asked them not to, or you found out you were being lied to, you would be reluctant to trust too. And the people we serve, people with disabilities, are people just like us, with feelings, hope for outcomes, imaginations, hopes for the future, just like us. So power over is going to cut someone off from those experiences. So we want to, again, be mindful of avoiding unintentional power over. One neat thing to try, and I offer this, is at your next annual planning meeting with someone, ask the person that we're there to support where they want others to sit. Really. Ask the person we're there to support where they want others that are participating in the meeting to sit. Have them arrange the seating arrangement. It's a game changer. Because the tone's going to change. It's not going to be, all right, we got to get this done and get this document out so it can be reviewed and we can get these things built and whatnot. It becomes about the person. I'm not saying that submitting documentation and making sure that all the things are turning are not important. They are. But it's really the people we serve is why we have the work we do. So where do we apply discovery? Again, we want to move away from those cookie cutter or leaning on prearranged supports as future supports. We want to be checking in. One of the ways we see person-centeredness happening and alive in the lives of those we serve is that when people supported have a network of connections, not just those that are paid to be there or immediate family, but friendships, people who choose to look out for them. If they're a part of a singing group or a trivia group that meets weekly and they don't show up, somebody's checking in just because they care about the person. And that they have an opportunity to work and live, just like we do. So what are some proposed next steps? We recommend, again, taking person-centered thinking training. IntellectAbility does offer this service, but we're not the only vendor. We would certainly love to have you. Craig did mention that we also, in our division, help to develop instructors of this material. Actually, as the mentor, I'm the person who does that. We also offer something called coaching, which is a way to become a on-site skill expert. So you're not a trainer as such, but you take the information training provides and apply it to situations you're facing. So that's something that we can do. You can create something called a one-page description. As the title implies, it's a face sheet that describes someone in a specific situation or setting. So you could create a one-page description with somebody who's seeking work, for example, because seeking out work is a topic. And through the steps of creating that one-page description, support them with that document. And then later on down the line, they land a job they want. You could create a new one-page description that describes the person to their new manager or coworkers. And with that said, we are now at the section where we can entertain questions. I hope there are some.
Yes,
Thank you.
there are.
Thank you very much, David, for presenting. You can see, everybody can see why I was excited to have David present. He does such a great job. And, you know, so many of these skills are not just about people we support, but they help us in everyday interactions with people around us. So thank you, David. Garrett, let's take some questions.
All right. Well, if you have a question, by the way, out there, and for either David or Craig or for Jodi, go ahead and drop it in now using your control module. And if we're going to get to as many as we can, we got a big audience and a lot of questions. So, but don't worry, if we don't, someone will reach out to you and make sure we get your question answered. First question is this, and this goes back to a story you told earlier, David. They're dying to know, did Elliot get his driver's license?
He sure did. In fact, there was a secondary benefit to having done so. Turns out Elliot also wanted to have a library card, and you need an ID to petition for one. So that ended up being a secondary benefit. But yes, he did.
Oh, good. Well, that's a happy ending to that story. And we just got some thumbs up here coming through. Okay, next question here is, what might we say to staff or other supporters who don't get the value of discovery?
Absolutely. So one of the things that can happen in our craft is that we get into a pattern of doing things. That's kind of what we do as human beings generally. So asking somebody to make a shift to use discovery if they're not yet familiar or haven't gotten the benefit of it, one of the ways I have approached that question is with a question, because being curious is a great way to get somebody on board. I'll say, share with me what you're doing now and how it's working. I would love to learn from you how you learn with others. And from there, ultimately what happens is somebody says, well, I don't really know and I'm kind of unsure. And then you can come in and say, you know, let's try this. Let's try a ritual and routine thing. And basically what I'd like you to do is ask the person how they want to get ready in the morning. Just listen up, jot down some notes, see what you can do to help them do that. Take that first little step. Give yourself a small win, because small wins are wins, especially when it comes to supporting other people's lives.
All right, next question here is, what could be said or what might be helpful when someone is reluctant to share about themselves?
Yes, I would simply recognize what's happening. As I shared earlier in the presentation, how people show who they are can be with words and with their body language. Sometimes before we get to content and what people know about themselves, I'm calling it content. Sometimes we need to recognize, hey, are you comfortable right now? Is there something happening for you? Are you maybe distracted? Is it too noisy in here? Does this feel weird to you? Because maybe that just needs to be recognized first. That, by the way, is also a path towards trust that leads to other sharing.
Okay, next question is this, is that these are a lot of great ideas, but what is an easy first step?
Absolutely. An easy first step might be, there are actually two. The first one is to simply be a good observer with the person that you're supporting. What catches their attention? Pay attention to what they are paying attention to. Also, pay attention to that which they might find not so pleasant, because both are very, maybe not necessarily recognized right away, because we're thinking about other things, we have a lot on our plates. And so if we're going to be effective at all at being supportive, we first need to be present. So like that Emily story, and paying attention to where Emily went when she was taken either to the aquatic center or the bowling alley. That sort of level of paying attention led to different support. And there are other like learning moments available to us if we're willing to observe in such a way.
Great. And Craig, feel free to chime in on any of these if you have thoughts. David is very articulate and
David's handling them
exhaustive.
beautifully.
Yes.
Now it's my turn to blush
All right.
again.
Okay. Next question here is, when do we start using discovery approaches to learn about people and what they want from their lives?
2 words, right now. There's no better time than the immediate, because discovery information is available to you at all times. What wisdom did Maya Angelou share with all of us? When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And that wisdom applies to all human beings. And that's why we remember them, because it has such truth to it. So to start out now. Use what was used here. If you find yourself curious about what was shared here, seek out further training. I only talked about 3 skills. There are 7 others I didn't touch and couldn't because of time constraints. And there are other approaches to learning and supporting connected with decision making and relationship building. It goes much deeper than this 1 hour can. But if you found this interesting, pursue that which made you curious, because that will lead to learning, that will lead to support.
Very good. And speaking of time constraints, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our session today. David, Dr. Escudé, thank you so much. This was a fantastic presentation. You really covered a lot of great material for us to think about, and gave some great skills for us to work on. And by the way, we're going to be sending out a link to the recording about an hour or so after we conclude, and there'll be a link to where you can also download the slides, and there'll be a lot of these kind of the recap there. But as we close out, I wanted to encourage you all to, if I could get you, David, to go forward in the next slide. There we go. And once again, there is a little plug here for the webinar series that Dr. Escudé is doing, and so there'll be on the slides that you can download. There'll be a link for that, as well as Dr. Craig. Did you want to speak to this for just a second?
Yeah, sure. So we on the previous slide that we have one more in the slides in the series, this series here, and David will be joining us again and supporting people with IDD or who are aging in person-centered ways. And so we'd love to have you join us for that one. I also do want to mention on the next slide the IntellectAbility IDD Perspective webinar series. It's a free webinar series for anyone who wants to join, where we talk about a lot of different health-related and support-related issues and concerns. And I always have a guest who comes on and we learn together about the next topics that are coming up are on dual diagnosis, and we have one in choice, independence, and relationships. And in, I believe, January is the reproductive health for women with IDD. So just a few of the upcoming topics. You can visit our website to learn more about these and all of our other offerings that we have. And then if you want to, yep.
There we go. And again, as we close out, I would encourage you all to, if you'd like to learn more about TCARE, head over to vbcexhibithall.com and check out their virtual exhibit booth here. And there's a lot of great material there that you can read up on what they're doing. And of course, they're the one that sponsored the webinar today. And Also, this webinar, along with others that we've done with them and others, is going to be archived in the free library that we have there. So you can go look up all different kind of topics and see a lot of great materials of webinars there. And then finally, if you would like to reach out to the TCARE team, I'll have you, Dave, I'll have you go to this last slide here. There it is. Jodi is happy to get you in touch with. Oh, and Greg's, I guess Dr. Escudé's information is on.
We have all of our information there.
Oh,
So.
David's. Okay, there you go. So you can reach out to any of them, or feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm happy to facilitate an introduction if that is easier for you. But again, thank you all so much for a great presentation, for spending your afternoon with us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and stay safe out there. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye now.
Don't forget to be awesome.
That's right.